Hello, everyone, and welcome to Around the Coin. I'm so excited today because we've got the three of us on, which I feel like every time we do is just such an explosive conversation. Brian, Faisal, myself, Mike here, and we are sitting here on a beautiful Sunday morning in the United States, and Faisal over in Pakistan Sunday evening. Is that right?
That is correct. And good morning to you, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Awesome. So we just had a fantastic pre-show. I feel like we're all pumped up and ready to dive into some news updates. We've got Amazon Echo, of course, making more headlines. Brian, on a personal note, how have things been since the last time we spoke?
Things are doing wonderfully, Mike. Thanks for asking. Good morning, gentlemen. I had a busy week. I was out in Las Vegas giving a demo of some of my voice first technology in a dusty warehouse in a corner of Vegas. And I also got to interview Verifone's Zabazar Vakaria, Vice President of Global Solutions. We'll have that up as a separate interview. Verifone's doing some incredible things on.
This is at the ETA, the exchange.
The ETA conference, Transact 2017.
Transact.
A great thank you to Jason Oxman, who's running the ETA, Electronic Transactions Association.
Brian, how many takes did you do to get the name right for Abizar Vakharia?
I'm thinking about 1,000. And Faisal is my coach. Faisal's my coach because
Abizar, if you're listening to it, Brian couldn't pronounce your name for shit, so I had to coach him on this thing.
Yeah, Abizar is an amazing guy. He comes from Amazon, the Alexa division. This should wake up a lot of folks who are in payments wondering, why is Brian always putting payments and voice together? Well, the folks over at Verifone sort of did the same thing, and he's running global solutions for Verifone, fresh out of Amazon. He'd only been there for like 3 weeks. So I got a great sort of fresh view. I met up with a lot of folks on the floor. I got to meet John Biddy for the first time over at Clover. We've interacted over the internet many, many times. I know a lot of people have worked with him. And Clover is just doing amazing things. A lot of these companies, I think Verifone and Clover are the companies to really look at when it comes to large-scale, medium-sized, large-sized merchants. Both companies are creating app economies. And I got to speak in detail off the record with both John and Abizar about their visions on app economies. And I got to say, as I am known to do, I instituted some of my insights on why I think the current app economy scenarios are somewhat flawed. And hopefully there will be some long talks and things moving forward from then. How about you, Faisal? What have you been up to?
Oh, before I jump into that, what was the big takeaway from ETA?
Well,
something that really stood out.
Well, the fact that any sort of it was something I told Square back in 2010. Said anything that you feel is innovative will be duplicated and multiplied across a mass scale in this payments industry. And what gives you your uniqueness will slowly become a commodity. That if you do not find a method of constantly innovating, and not just heads down, iterating, but true innovating, you'll be able to lead this parade. After walking away from the ETA this year, there is absolutely nothing unique, and Mike can attest to this about putting a POS system on a tablet. There were literally hundreds of folks, some on the floor, some outside, that were hawking these systems, and also purposely designed systems. The cream of the crop is access to market and the sales channel. The biggest
100%.
error.
I can tell you, as someone who built a startup and then later sold it to big commerce, that is 110% true. That the technology there. I mean, we built ours at Zing. This was 6 years ago, and it was one of the first payment mobile point of sale systems to use an iPad, which compared to the $5,000 terminal that you'd have to get if you're using micros. I mean, the category in itself is a major revolution, but you're right. It's really about the distribution channels and sales.
And I don't want to beat up on Square here, but one of the biggest flaws in their thinking was it just sells itself. The problem with everybody in this market is you can easily gain access to micro merchants, or what used to be called marginal merchants. A marginal merchant would be a merchant typically would not survive a long period of time. It's very difficult to find any way to make money on them unless you had mass scale of aggregation. And even then, over time, others will pick off the quality merchants in that subset cohort. And Square is going to be facing that. All of the players in the marketplace are going to be facing that. And after walking away from ETA, and not so much the stuff I saw on the floor, but the stuff I saw privately, it should really make the folks at Square start making choices about is iterating a good idea or innovating. And I have my ideas. Hey, guys, at Square, you know my phone number. Anyway, the bottom line is it's a much more aggressive market than I think, Mike, you probably remember the last time you were at one of these shows. The people that are surviving they are just bloodthirsty. I mean, they are just willing to do everything to gain market share. Yeah.
So is it complacency that's out there on the exhibition floor or not?
No, the complacency is actually with the innovative startups. This is what really frustrates me. I can name...
Really? That is really a unique perspective.
No, this is going to get me in trouble, but I'm not going to name names, but I may have mentioned one. What I call young companies. I try not to use the young and legacy companies. What I can tell you is the pendulum has switched in the payment space. Most of the young companies have lost their drive to become innovative. Square just put out a debit card that's laser etched. That's it. They put a debit card out. It's part of a grand theory of how to get on both sides of the transaction. I'm going to say it. It's going to fucking fail. Utterly under everybody's analysis. And I just wish the company would focus on what I think is much more inventive ways to do what they want to do. You can sense my frustration in this because, it sounds like a great idea. It sounds like, oh, you don't get the bigger vision. You'll see it. You wait. And perhaps I want to be wrong. But we'll bookmark this and we'll look back in 3 years and we'll decide whether laser etching somebody's name on the front of a physical debit card is an innovative step or a waste of time and money. I call it distractions and abstractions. There are others that I can go down the list that are lacking innovation. They are iterating, heads down, iterating. They're using, the classic terminology. A lot of the founders that used to be, really high profile are just, I'm back in the back working. The problem is, while they're doing that, companies like PayPal are going to be eating their lunch. PayPal is a legacy company, but they're acting much more like a startup. Companies like First Data, a very old legacy company. Let me tell you, what I've seen off the floor, when they start implementing this, all the companies I mentioned and more should really be starting to worry. And I'm talking companies that are doing online APIs. I'm talking companies that are making other systems. It's not because, it's because there is innovation, but there's also because they truly understand the models of access to market. And they don't just placate to it. They actually encourage it. I sat in on a sales seminar of one of these companies. I can't name exactly who. And they packed this room with 100 salespeople at the ETA conference. And these are the survivors. And I can tell you, these, the few hundred people in this room, probably a little more than 100, they're not going to go to work for some of these young companies because of the attitude towards sales that they have. Some of these companies have made public statements about, we're only going to hire salespeople when we really just have to. That was brought up in this conference, and specifically the company that said that. When that company comes around and wants to hire what I think are probably the 100 best salespeople to sell medium and large size companies, payment systems, they ain't going to be able to hire these people at any price because they've gotten to the point where their talent is so in demand. I mean, these are people that write $60-80 million worth of business a year in payment processing, $100 million a year in payment processing individually. I mean, one individual, $1 trillion in payment processing. And he's not...
Brian, is this on the Square category? I mean, one piece of...
It's in category everybody got to... Sure.
They have gone up. They're at the highest point today, their stock price that they've ever been.
Oh,
and
of course.
A pretty steady climb over the last year, almost since they launched, really, or since they IPO'd in 2015.
No. Listen, Square's doing exceedingly well in what they've done well at. Right. And I'm not a Square detractor. You know, again, you hear my emotional aspects to this. It's because there's so much more that they can be doing. It's more of a frustration of an outside observer, seeing the mistakes in slow motion and wishing they didn't have to happen. There's more than enough space for literally thousands of companies in the payment space. So I don't feel like, it's winner take all. It's never going to be that way. What happens is, Square's got to move up market. They got to go to medium and large size merchants. To do that, you cannot self-sell. And they literally put themselves in failure mode in 2010. And we used to talk about this in earlier shows, that they didn't believe they needed to hire sales teams. That this utter thing is a distasteful aspect of the Silicon Valley. We don't do that. And Mike, I mean, you remember having to go out and sell this system. You know that these things did not sell themselves as you tried to go up market. Am I right?
Yeah, totally. Especially back then because it was also new. But today may be different. Where I don't know. I sort of go back and forth on the mentality of the use of salespeople at different tiers in the market. I mean, for the tiny farmers market, it obviously makes no sense to have a direct salesperson.
At all.
But then again, I think it's impossible at enterprise contract level. So somewhere in the middle, there's a vague line and there's some ROI. But I think it's just, I don't think there's any like deep, fundamental philosophical. I think it's just like, hey, at this market size or this tier, it makes sense to have salespeople. So you hire them. I don't know. I think it's almost a blown conversation where it's just, hey, we just hire him if we need him. Otherwise, we don't. I think it's quite a liquid decision.
I see your point, but I'm a believer that you should have a chief sales officer of any company that you form day one, no matter what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you're selling something. And I think we get diluted into this idea that no, we're an engineering firm, that we don't really sell anything. This is the bullshit that's being fed to a lot of young companies, and it has been their undoing. And I think you can find any company that has a CEO that publicly states that they don't need salespeople and they're not going to hire salespeople. And you look and you follow their arc of trajectory of success. The success is that much lower because they made that mistake. And I've never seen a case where it's untrue. And, so do you have salespeople the day one? No, you have a chief sales officer. If in fact you're the right kind of company, you do what Steve Jobs did. Steve was chief sales officer. He died chief sales officer. And most people are blind to this. When we would watch Steve get on a stage at a conference and introduce a new Apple product, guess what that was? That was a sales pitch. That was a sales pitch from a chief sales officer. And people just don't understand that. And so what they do is they somehow deify, in a very negative sense, the idea of selling, when in fact that's the only reason you exist as a business, is to sell something.
Yeah, I think it makes sense when salespeople make sense when you're not going direct to consumer, such as the Amazon Aleco, which is an expensive item but doesn't need the salesperson role because it's so direct consumer for like most things, frankly.
It will need a salesperson when you go into larger businesses. Yeah. One of the many companies I've talked to, stealth companies that is working with enterprise level voice first technology. They took my advice and they founded their company with the chief sales officer. In fact, here's what I said. I said, the next time you meet with me, if you don't have a chief sales officer, you have to pay. You have to pay to talk to me. Otherwise, it's my open office hours.
I'll tell you this though.
They got a chief sales officer.
We went to when I started a company called FlowTab. It was mobile payments for restaurants, bars, nightclubs. So you can order on your phone and deliver to an iPad behind the bar. It was a pretty clever solution. The business had a lot of fundamental economic issues in it, but we were invited to the Dex One annual conference. And for those who don't know, Dex One in their heyday, this is like 10, 15 years ago, they sold the Yellow Pages. So they had a team of 3,000 salespeople across the country, feet on the ground, walking into, in St. Louis, they would walk into every shop and they would sell advertising on Yellow Pages. And this is what Google displaced. But those 3,000 salespeople are looking at us as, hey, we can go into digital and sell digital tools to local merchants, which is, it's a very, very tough value proposition, because you're now, paying for that sales rep to go on the ground, on foot, in your door, which is, hundreds of dollars relative to them just doing a Google search.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the ETA is the ETA has been the home of independent selling organizations, ISOs, for, back for almost 25 years. And of course, the industry has changed a lot, but the entire industry, if you look at the entire payments industry in the United States, the merchant processing industry, 90% of the transaction volume comes through the work product of direct selling organizations, or ISOs. 90%. And none of these other startups have even made a dent in that across the board. And if you were to buy into the stories that we read in the tech press, business press, or even the insights of some business professors that say, oh, these models are broken, they're just dead. And meanwhile, I'm walking through a conference with people that I've seen for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. Like, how's things going? Well, we're 3 times larger than we were last year. And so, yes, the market is always going to be competitive. It's always going to be complex. And there's always going to be some new blood and new ideas. But ultimately, it's a commodity business, but it's not really a commodity business. And that's kind of one of the secrets to it. Yeah, anyway, other things that were exciting. Did you guys see the Echo Show finally came out? What's your impression if you've been following the news?
Faisal, what do you think? How do you think it works?
Yeah.
So this is the
Brian's the oracle on this thing. So,
I know he wants to warm up the amateurs before he just douses us with the truth.
But I'll tell you one thing.
I really like to hear first person insights.
But I've been comparing the Alexa with, what's the other one? The Google thing, right?
Yeah.
Google Home.
Still a little difficult to make a decision. Not just because they aren't doing much for me in this part of the world, but more so because, it's not about the money. But if I invest in it and I really want it to do some things, the things that I want it to do, they're not doing it in this part of the world, and that's what frustrates me. So everything is more U.S.
It's so slow.
And so forth.
It's so slow going international.
But I also think, is it something that is set by these companies that prevents it from being developed for the outside world? I don't think so, but that's the direction it seems to be going in, right?
I think when Apple comes out with their new updated version of Siri and their standalone voice first device, we'll start seeing the beginnings of that at WWDC in June. We're going to see a lot more internationalization on a much wider scale.
I mean, it's a novelty in this part of the world, right? I mean, how many people are going to buy it and put it and cook dinner? I don't know if you've been to this part of the world, but the kitchen is not exactly a hospital, a very hospital environment when it comes to the average temperature in there. It's just like cook and get the hell out, right? So thinking about putting something like this over there on the side, not gonna happen, Thinking about putting something like this in the office, I don't know.
So one perspective I got out of this recently was I saw this company. I met these 2 founders who built this. It was Alexa skill set app. There's roughly, I'd say, 10,000 skills now.
13,000 as of.
So I met this. I met this team, and they had this clever app where they basically had keywords for different responses. So think of them like an IFTTT or Zapier, where it's like a a channel selection tool. So you could say you can give it secret words. So Faisal could be in the kitchen cooking, and all of a sudden,
Pay for the food delivery,
your friend comes over and your friend's there and he's hanging out and you want him to leave. You're like, I just want this guy to leave. I got my girl here. I want to eat dinner with her. So you can have a programmed keyword for Alexa to say, Alexa, remind me for my soccer game tomorrow at 2 p.m. And that keyword will say and then this is where you could set it. It'll say in 5 minutes, it'll send me a phone call, or 5 minutes, it'll send me a text message or something. And then it has a keyword on there that says,
Faisal, your upcoming appointment at 3 a.m. is now due.
Yeah. And then you could say, and then it'll text you in 5 minutes to say, hey, you've got to go downstairs, or, something will happen. So it builds in this flexibility, but it was a cool app that kind of opened my mind to where, imagine Alexa now. I remember when I was a kid, I would always have those intercom systems, where you could press the button and you could talk to someone throughout the house. And before that, you had the solo cups that were attached with a string. But I think now, imagine,
I did both.
Yeah, imagine having 3 or 4 Alexas throughout your house, and it just kind of, wherever you go, you just kind of talk, and you don't have to be looking. Now I have
Brian, I guess.
The Echo Dot.
Mike and Brian, I guess what I'm trying to say is first world problems versus third world problems, right?
Oh, no, there's a big difference.
You're thinking about how to program Alexa. Most of the people here are thinking how to get water, right? I mean, how to get water, clean drinking water. It is a huge thing. So I think the impact in these emerging markets will be very, very limited at best. And the markets that it may shine are, for example, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and Korea, and maybe parts of Europe, obviously. But that's about it. I don't see it being infiltrated in masses in the way you and I are thinking about, let's say the U.S.
I agree. But things change over time. But Mike makes a really important point. The thing about the Echo Look and the Echo Show is that they're defining new categories. Mostly at this point, the Echo Show, Echo Look will start doing it, is, one of the features that it creates is that intercom environment. If you guys have an Echo, you right now, existing Echo, you can start making phone calls between Echoes and the Alexa app, or the Alexa app and the Echo. In the very future, something that I've been predicting, I seem to be the only one, is that Amazon is going to move the ability to make phone calls inside of the Amazon app. The day they do that, Amazon will be the largest VoIP type of communication system on the planet, pretty much, with the number of apps that people have downloaded using Amazon. So that would crush Skype. It would crush, obviously, everybody else in the space. My feeling about this is the use cases of what a voice-first device is doing is going to spread horizontally and vertically rapidly, so much so that it's going to be confusing for a lot of people to understand. One of my early manifestos, I wrote about the idea that this device with the screen. See, I say voice first. It doesn't mean voice only. What it means is the voice is mediating the AI and the relationship with the device. And what we're seeing with the Echo Show is the beginnings of that. You're in the kitchen. I give you a classic, America type of use case, right? You're in the kitchen and your mom calls, or, your kid calls, or whatever. And they happen to be at home with their device. You can now have a interaction while you're preparing a meal. Now, I'm putting this in the kitchen because that's secret operation number one for Jeff Bezos. Secret operation number one for the Alexa was take over the kitchen. Operation number one, success. There's absolutely nobody else dominating the kitchen. And one by one, Amazon is going to take over every room in the house, maybe in the bathroom. That's a different thing. But I mean, the Echo Look takes over the closet. It's a fashion advisor. You stand in front of it. It tells you if you look good. Give you recommendations. Echo Show is a communication system primarily. It's a data feedback system too. Also, it is secretly what Amazon's trying to avoid ever having this conversation. It's secretly a voice commerce platform. It's a confirmation system. Most people need a prosthetic system, a prosthetic device to help them through a voice-first transaction, at least the first 2 or 3 or 4 times ordering a product. After that, they don't care what it looks like. I mean, it's this fallacy of a lot of tech writers and insiders and pundits say, "Oh, it's never good. It's always going to have a screen because everybody wants to look at it." No, it's what we've acclimated ourselves to. Once we know what a product looks like, our ordering of it is commodity based, and we don't need to.
Let me jump in and read you this. This is a letter from Jeff Bezos to the product team internally at Amazon titled "No PowerPoint presentations from now on." And it was set in 2004, June 9, 2004. We'll include a link for this in the show notes. It says, from Jeff, a little more help with the question why. Well-structured narrative text is just what we're after rather than just text. If someone builds a list of bullet points in Word, that would be just as bad as a PowerPoint. The reason writing a good 4-page memo is harder than writing a 20-page PowerPoint is because the narrative structure of good memo forces better thought and better understanding of what's more important than what and how things are related. PowerPoint-style presentations somehow give permission to gloss over ideas, flatten out any sense of relative importance, and ignore the interconnectedness of ideas. Period. And I thought that was a good kind of like description of where he's potentially go. Like he's thinking in line of how do we better allow people to communicate? What's the medium? What's the format?
Exactly. And you know, I could tell you a use case already. There are millions of families that are separated around not only the United States, but around the world. And I'm not just talking about moms and dads and divorces and stuff like that. I'm also talking about grandparents that have become disconnected from our nuclear families. What made humans thrive and survive, in my view, in studying anthropology and history, is that we created extended family structures. Now, the bloodline doesn't necessarily have to be the tie, but the group of generations is a tie. That means multi-generations. You have great-grandparents, grandparents, you have children, you have the grandchildren, maybe the great-grandchildren. And in Aboriginal cultures, they would all be in a close proximity. What we do not understand about FaceTime and Skype and all these other things is the fundamental cognitive barriers and mechanical barriers to initiate those types of conversations. Now, it sounds like we're lazy. It really isn't. When you really do the studies on this and you understand what the human mind goes through to initiate these things, you understand that it's not really from the lazy part of the mind. It's more about the functional part of the mind. What Amazon is doing is they've studied the human being much more than Jeff Bezos is willing to imagine. And I can tell not only because of people I know there, but by their products. And what they're doing, I'll give you the example I'm leading up to. Imagine sitting around a table, and on that table is an Alexa show, and there's hopefully mom, dad, and the kids, and there's mom, grandmom, and grandpa, or maybe two of these with both grandparents, and maybe once a week, maybe every night, you have dinner together. Part of the problem, and Mike, I know you've dealt this with Home Hero, part of the problem, the structural problem with the elderly, is that they become disconnected from us, even with all of these contact points. Everybody listening to me, I am certain that if you have a parent, a grandparent that's still alive, you do not connect with them any more than you would have if you were in the 1950s and had a telephone. Well, these extra contact points really don't allow us to connect. We might share pictures a little more. We might get a thumbs up, but that's not the connection that human beings really thrive under and are really needing. And so what we're seeing is we're building that new idea. And that's what it's not designed to replace everything else. It's actually, the Echo Show is there to create a new product category. And it's an on-demand, situational, real-time video interaction and or audio communication system. It's very much what the phone was, the home phone was. It locked itself into a physical space. And when we got our cell phones, it disengaged us from the physical space. And that's good. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But I'm saying there's something to be said when something is locked into a physical space. When Apple enters this market of a physical device, which I'm calling home base for a lot of reasons, it may or may not be named that. I was calling the Apple Wallet iWallet. And it later became Apple Pay, and then they called it Wallet again. Before that, it was, I don't know, forget what it was, but Passbook.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're creating a new product category. This new product category is going to connect people on a level that I don't think anybody thought about before other than Bezos. And it's going to be the embodiment of these types of devices that have on-demand video and the ability to say, hey, call grandma real quick. Let's have dinner with grandma. When they do that commercial on a mass scale, that alone will probably make it one of the most popular products that holiday season. I'm not saying the 2018 Amazon show will break that, because I believe that the price barrier is a little too high for it to go mass scale like the Echo Dot did in 2017 holiday. But when the Echo show-like device reaches the $99 price point,
it'll be
and it's marketed at that level, it will be profound in the way it changes divorced families and separated families.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point. I would almost highlight it more to say in Apple's future, they view a different vision of the world than what Amazon does. And distinctly different in the sense that Apple views that technology products should be a luxury good for people, that they should be, they should be jewelry that connects to the internet. And, just like the BMW, which Steve Jobs described initially, only certain people have it. You have an enduring and emotional relationship with your technology, the personal computing device. I mean, just think how Apple brands everything. Now, picture Amazon. Amazon's products are merely a means to an end. They're under the hood. They are, whether it be drones, warehouses, voice cylinders, they're the things that power the things that we want to do. They don't highlight. You don't get the Amazon or the Echo show, Alexa show, and the Alexa, Echo because you feel so much more, glamorous for having it. No, it purely powers what you want to do. And so I think Amazon is almost the meta technology company. They're the ones powering us to do what we want. Even look at them, going down the lines of the grocery store. I want to be able to walk out with my food and my items and not have to scan anything. Well, Amazon built that. And that feels like purely Amazon's vision, which I just absolutely love. And I tend to think Amazon's vision for that, if those two perspectives are true, I can't not support Amazon over Apple.
Exactly.
If that's if Faisal, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have another perspective on it, I certainly think price point of Apple puts it out of potential ownership category for a lot of people in the world. But maybe Amazon's price slashing mentality is really aligned with this greater vision.
I think Faisal took a quick break, but Mike, you really point out something I think is phenomenal, and that is, it's okay to have different visions. There's not this the Steve Jobs or the Apple vision.
No, definitely.
There's a Google vision too. All of them are valid, but what happens is, and what makes life so beautiful is that we grow. And as we grow, maybe we're still the same tree, but the tree looks different, and it's going to get more complex. And I think Amazon is leading because, in some ways, they are so much closer to the ground. It comes back to full circle. The reason why Amazon is so good is because they are salespeople. They're selling things 24/7. I cannot tell you how important that is for anybody that's starting an engineering company or a tech company. And so is Apple. Everybody says, oh, the retail store is closing down. And I ask everybody that tells me that, where'd you get your iPhone when it first came out? Oh, I went to the Apple store. Oh, I see. You went to the Apple retail store to buy an Apple product in retail. So retail is closing down. No, it isn't. The way we buy retail is theatrical, and that's what makes it magical. And Amazon even understands that. They're making a magical store experience called the Amazon Go Store experience. So we still crave these things, and Bezos gets it. Apple gets it. Just a whole lot of other people don't.
I think it's sharply decreasing. I can't say it's not going to exist, but it is absolutely.
It's morphing into a different experience. One of the things I saw.
Purely like just a fact of the industry is that the number of square foot retail spaces out there is strongly decreasing.
It needed to be.
There's less stores. There's less square footage out there in retail space in metropolitan areas.
So what happened was the big, we probably got to wrap soon, but the big box retailers, because of a lot of free flow and capitalization over the past 20 years, they over overextended themselves. And that, in a sense, created a ripple down Main Street of a lot of towns. Also, of course, Walmart helped also with that. The pendulum is swinging back. There's a vitality coming back to Main Streets. There are smaller shops, more Etsy-like products. There are artisan grocery stores. There are, organic farmer markets. There are all sorts of things rehabituating these locations. I ultimately believe that some of the malls worth saving will rehabituate into these types of modalities to such a level that we'll start laughing at sort of our view today that we're just going to get everything drone delivered by Amazon. We ultimately won't. We are a social species, and until somebody rewires our brain, we're going to always want to find ways to socialize. That's why certain coffee shops, bars, and restaurants are crowded today. Today's Mother's Day, and
yeah, that's right. We didn't even say anything about that. Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to everybody. So
but yeah, no, but that purpose, that's not a retail store in the sense you're going there for something. People rarely go into the Apple store to hang out. Yeah, you go for the experience. You go for the communication to other people. It in itself is a destination.
One of the new experiences.
I think people do go to Apple stores to hang out. I mean,
yes, I was just going to say that.
I mean, that's one of the things that they are very, very successful at. I may not go to a Microsoft store, but when I go to a new city, I go to an Apple store just to hang out, just because I want to see it, because they're beautiful.
And Apple has said they want to make the Apple Store more of a hangout social experience for people of, the late teens, early 20s type of thing. Do not be surprised if you find a coffee shop very soon inside of an Apple.
Well,
and it won't be Blue Bottle Coffee.
I also want to say,
by the way.
I did not know for the longest of time, and, pardon my ignorance, but I just did not know that Apple stores sold non-Apple goods,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they do, quite a lot of them. So that was a big surprise to me. And when you go to Istanbul, one of the Apple store over there is just beautifully designed in Zorlu Center. And if you go to Munich or in Barcelona or Madrid,
great stores,
they're just fantastic stores over there. So I think they do go over there just to hang out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I got to close it up with one thing. Apple had a conference, had a small show at the ETA conference. That was an invitation only thing. And I saw a automated, people might call it a vending machine. I will call it an automated retail system that Apple's not making, but one of their partners have put together. And all I can tell you is it is utterly phenomenal. And I spent perhaps 2 hours talking to the CEO
Is it like
of the
where
company.
you put 6,000 quarters in and it pops an iPhone out?
It's better than that. It's you hold up your iPhone and it opens a door. It opens a door, but get this. You get to interact and touch all of the items inside this automated retail system. And you get to tactically feel it and look at it. Is this something I want to buy? And when you take it off the shelf, it tells you on your phone and on the vending machine that you're buying it. Would you like to complete the transaction? There's no timeout. It's not like, they're just saying you have it in your hand. It's recognizing you're holding it. And if you like it, you can just close the door and walk away. And you're paid for it. If you don't
that
like
almost
it,
feels like the way it should be, right? Should it be any other way other than that?
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm envisioning. All I can tell you is I hit it off really well with the chief scientist and also the CEO. I had a sort of a vision, I think, that was stunning for them. And all I could say is in the future, we're going to be talking a whole lot about this. It is absolutely stunning technology. When you see how this machine looks, especially the second generation, they only showed the first generation. It is phenomenal. And I got to hand it to Apple. The Apple folks really drew this out of not only this company, but a federation of 5 companies that are working. And it's a showpiece for the future of Apple. And we may very well see it inside of Apple stores. That's all I'm going to say. But you will see it a lot of places if I have anything to do with it. It's a new payment modality. New payment modality. And interesting what payment companies are going to be involved with. And by the way, it has a voice commerce, voice first interaction system. And that's all I could say right now. So.
All right. Faisal, any closing thoughts? I know we had to wrap up a little quick today, but...
So, we are going to be starting our series for women in tech, women in fintech, and be inviting women from all over the world and interview them and get to hear their part of the story. It is, I believe, a story that is neglected on our part, and I think we need to do our part. And
what appropriate day to do it
word.
on Mother's Day, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're kicking it
Exactly,
off. We
exactly.
had thought about this years in advance, months in advance. We thought Mother's Day would be a perfect day to announce this.
yeah, it all falls into place. But
So
yeah,
in the coming shows, we'll do the announcements and how you can reach to us and so forth, and take it from there.
absolutely
Awesome. Fantastic, guys. Well, as always, very much enjoyed it and look forward to the next one.
wonderful
guys.
show,
Take
guys.
care.
You take care.
Have a good one.